The day you stop needing attention is the day they start needing your presence. Let's make this real, folks. The moment you stopped chasing validation, the moment you stopped checking your phone every 5 minutes hoping for a message, the moment you finally chose peace over chaos, silence over noise, stillness over drama, that was the exact moment they lost you. Not because you vanished, not because you cut them off with a dramatic goodbye, but because you outgrew the circus they needed you to stay trapped in. That's when you became untouchable. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a loud, chaotic market. Everyone is shouting for attention. Look at me, pick me, don't leave me. But then you walk out, you take a deep breath, and you climb a mountain. At the top, it's silent. No eyes on you, no applause, no attention. Just peace, and you realize this is what you were really craving the whole time, not the crowd, not the noise, but the stillness where you can hear your own soul again. That's the kind of silence that scares people, because when you're no longer dependent on their attention, you become unforgettable. You see, most people don't love you. They love the version of you that needed them, the one that over-explained, the one that constantly proved their worth, the one that begged for a little scrap of recognition. But when you stop doing that, when you stop feeding the machine of their ego, they panic. Not because you hurt them, but because you took your energy back. That energy was their oxygen, your peace. That's their suffocation. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." And my friends, when you retreat into that soul, when you start honoring yourself instead of chasing others, you become dangerous in the most beautiful way. You're no longer available for manipulation. You're no longer auditioning for love. You're no longer a puppet pulled by strings of validation. You're a mountain, still, silent, unshakable. And from that mountain, you watch as the very people who once ignored you start to miss the warmth they took for granted. They didn't lose you when they ignored your texts. They didn't lose you when they failed to appreciate your loyalty. No, they lost you the moment you chose peace over attention. That's when the game changed. That's when the silence started screaming. And here's the truth. Your silence will echo longer than any words you could have said. That's the real power. That's the Stoic way. So stay with me, because in this journey, I'm going to show you how peace becomes your power, how silence becomes your sword, and how detachment becomes your freedom. No more chasing, no more needing, just presence, just peace, just power. Now say it with me. Write it in the comments right now. Peace over attention. Let the world see you've returned to yourself. Let them feel your absence, and let them remember the silence you left behind. Press like, subscribe, and let's go deeper. Number 1, attention is the modern drug. Peace is the cure. Most people don't really want the truth. They just want attention dressed up as validation. Let that sink in for a second. Because when you chose peace, when you chose your silence over their spotlight, you didn't just make a decision, you started a revolution inside yourself. And for them, that's when the panic began. Because the moment you stopped playing their game, you stopped feeding the addiction. Attention, let's not sugarcoat it, is the most dangerous drug of this generation. It's cheap. It's easy to get, and it gives a high so short-lived that we keep coming back for more. Scroll, like, post, reply, chase, repeat. Sound familiar? That's not connection. That's dependency disguised as interaction. Imagine a thirsty man in the desert, constantly chasing mirages. He sees the shimmer, he runs, but the water never comes. That's what seeking attention feels like. They gave you the illusion of love, the illusion of care, but only when it served them. You were supposed to keep running toward it, keep needing it. But the moment you stopped, the moment you sat down and said, "I'd rather be alone than be addicted to this illusion," that's when the spell broke. Now let's flip the mirror. Maybe you've asked yourself, if I stop reaching out, will they forget me? Will I just disappear from their life? That fear, that little voice in your head whispering that peace means isolation, that's the lie you were programmed to believe, because they want you needy, they want you reaching, they want you to fear silence. But silence is not the absence of value, it's the presence of strength. You see, peace is scary to people who feed off noise. You choosing to sit in stillness, to no longer shout your worth, is terrifying to those who only felt powerful when you were insecure. You ever notice how when you're loud, when you're explaining, defending, trying, they're calm, and the moment you go silent, they start to spiral? That's not coincidence, that's control slipping through their fingers. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And learning to live without being fueled by attention, that's a master-level transformation. Because here's the truth. Attention is external. Peace is internal. Attention is borrowed. Peace is owned. Attention fades. Peace stays. Why is it so hard to break free from this? Because we were trained, from childhood even, to link attention with love. A crying child gets noticed. A silent one is ignored. So we grow up thinking, if I'm not loud, I won't be loved. If I'm not available, I won't be seen. If I'm not chasing, I won't be chosen. But that was never love. That was performance. That was conditional affection. And your soul was never meant to audition. My friends, they lost you the moment you no longer needed applause. They lost you the moment you stopped showing up to prove your worth. And yes, it will hurt at first. Walking away from the stage always does. There will be nights when silence feels like a void, not a victory. But give it time, because that silence, it will become your sanctuary. Let's put it in a way they don't want you to realize. The less you seek attention, the more you become a mystery. And mystery is magnetic. People start wondering what changed, why you're no longer available, why your energy feels unreachable. And in that wondering, they realize they've lost access, not to your body, not to your replies, but to your attention. And that was the real treasure. Peace doesn't scream. It doesn't post for likes. It doesn't beg for closure. Peace whispers. And when you carry that kind of presence, you don't need to be seen to be remembered. Your absence will echo louder than your presence ever did. That's what Stoicism teaches us, to be rooted so deeply in self that even storms cannot move you. So here's what I want you to remember. You are not boring because you are quiet. You are not forgotten because you are unavailable. You are not weak because you don't fight for attention. You are powerful because you don't have to. You are magnetic because you choose peace over chaos. And that scares people who thrive on drama. Let it scare them. That's not your problem anymore. It's time to break the lie that attention equals love. Let the truth rise. Your peace is the highest form of self-respect. Write this in the comments right now. Not for me, for you, for the world that tried to make you feel invisible without their approval. Peace is my power. Type it out, claim it, declare it. Let it be your rebellion and your reminder. Because every time you speak peace into your identity, the noise loses its grip on your soul. And stay with me, because next we're going even deeper into the moment they realize they can't control you anymore, because your silence became the loudest truth they've ever heard. Number 2, your peace was the last thing they controlled. You don't miss the person, you miss the version of yourself who still begged to be chosen. Let that quote land in your bones, my friend, because deep down, you know it's true. They didn't just lose you when you walked away. They lost you when your peace became more important than their chaos. That's when everything shifted, when they could no longer provoke a reaction, no longer make you question yourself, no longer disturb your stillness. That's when you stopped being theirs and started being yours again. See, people who feed on control don't need to scream or shout. They simply find your weakness, your need to be seen, your fear of being alone, your craving for closure, and they press on it, slowly, softly, until you start performing just to feel okay again. You weren't even aware of it at first. It felt like love. It felt like care. It felt like connection. But it was control. And the moment you took your power back, the whole game fell apart. Imagine your peace as a room filled with soft light and quiet music. It's where your soul rests. But they kept barging in, uninvited, loud, turning the volume up, knocking things over. And every time you tried to clean it up, they did it again. Until one day, you locked the door, not because you hated them, but because you loved yourself enough to guard your peace. That's what they can't stand. Not that you're gone, but that they no longer have the keys to your calm. And here's the thing they never expected. You would rather lose them than lose yourself again. You would rather sit in silence than live in anxiety. You would rather be misunderstood than keep over-explaining. That's when they knew. Not through a dramatic speech, not through a final argument, but in your stillness, in the space you no longer filled, in the energy you no longer gave. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." That's the secret. That's the storm inside your silence. It's not weakness, it's not apathy, it's a controlled burn. You are no longer reactive, you are no longer a puppet, you are no longer bound by their chaos. And the truth, that peace you now carry, it was the last thing they could control, and now it's gone. Let's get brutally honest for a second. Maybe you used to panic when they didn't respond. You used to change your tone just to keep the peace. You used to walk on eggshells, edit your truth, dim your joy, all because their mood dictated your worth. That's not love. That's emotional hostage-taking, and you broke out. So why does it still ache sometimes? Because part of you still remembers the version of yourself who tolerated it. Part of you mourns the years you spent giving your light to people who only came around to drain it. But hear this clearly, you didn't fail by walking away. You succeeded by finally choosing stillness over survival. That's power. That's growth. Let me tell you something else they never saw coming. You stopped reacting, and they started reflecting. You stopped explaining, and they started wondering. You stopped chasing, and suddenly they're the ones staring at their phone, reading your silence like a scripture. Not because you're playing games, but because you stopped playing altogether. And let's not lie, this isn't easy. Peace doesn't always feel powerful in the beginning. It feels lonely, it feels empty, it feels foreign, because you're detoxing from a lifestyle where chaos was normal. But give it time. Watch how your breath deepens. Watch how your focus returns. Watch how your confidence rises, not because someone clapped for you, but because you did. You don't need their attention to prove your value. You don't need their reaction to know your worth. You don't need to be the louder one to be heard by the right people. Real connection doesn't come from being controlled. It comes from being free. And the version of you that chooses peace over performance, that's the version they'll never get back. So write this in the comments right now. They lost control the moment I found peace. Let that be your reminder. Let it be your anchor. You didn't need to win an argument. You didn't need to be louder. You just needed to be still. Because stillness reveals what noise hides. And in your stillness, they met their own emptiness. Stay with me, because next, we're going into one of the biggest traps people fall into after they choose peace. The fear of being forgotten. But I'll show you why being unavailable is the most unforgettable thing you can ever become. Number 3. The fear of being forgotten versus the power of being unavailable. Don't fear being forgotten, fear staying so accessible that they never learn your worth. Let that hit where it needs to hit, because for most people, the hardest part of letting go isn't detachment. It's the fear that silence means disappearance. That the second you stop reaching out, stop showing up, stop posting, calling, texting, explaining, you'll vanish from their mind like you were never there. And that fear, that's the chain that kept you crawling. That's the emotional leash you finally started breaking. But even now, somewhere deep inside, the question still echoes. What if they forget me? Let's get raw. That question isn't just a whisper, it's a scream in your most vulnerable moments, because you gave your heart, your effort, your time, your presence, and now you're gone. Not because you're cruel, but because you had to choose peace. Still, that doubt creeps in late at night. What if they don't miss me? What if I was never enough to leave a mark? But here's what you need to know, and I mean really know in your bones. People don't forget the ones who pulled away with grace. They remember the ones who stopped performing, who stopped proving, who stopped apologizing for asking to be seen. They remember the ones who left, not with slamming doors, but with quiet dignity, because silence, it burns. Availability is taken for granted, but distance, it haunts. Imagine this, you're at a party, music blasting, lights flashing, people laughing, drinks pouring. You're in the middle of the noise, but then someone walks out of the room, not loudly, not angrily. They just leave, no drama, no goodbye, just gone. At first, no one notices, but a few minutes later, people start looking around. Hey, where did they go? Someone walks to the hallway, checks outside, still nothing. And then, silence hits different. The room suddenly feels too loud, because now the absence has weight. That's what your silence becomes when you leave with peace. It's not absence, it's presence redefined. The people who took you for granted never really feared losing you. They feared losing access to you, your energy, your empathy, your consistency, your love. That was their supply. You weren't just a person, you were a source. And now that source is off limits. And trust me, they feel it. They feel it when their phone lights up and it's not you. They feel it when a memory hits and they can't share it with you. They feel it when they need your softness, your insight, your care, and you're no longer there to give it freely. Because here's the secret, and it's a hard one. They don't forget you. They just pretend to, until the silence gets too loud. Until the stillness you've chosen becomes a mirror they can't look away from. That's when the shift begins. That's when the attention they didn't give becomes the regret they can't escape. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." And they will crave more of you. Not because you're chasing them, but because you've made yourself unavailable. You're not just distant, you're different. You're no longer offering yourself at a discount. You're not serving up your energy on a silver platter just to be tolerated. You're not on sale anymore, and they can't afford your peace. And still, you'll ask yourself, but what if they really don't care? Good. Let them not care. Let them prove it. Because your value is not measured by their reaction. It's measured by your ability to walk away and still stand tall. It's measured by your ability to disappear without collapsing. And guess what? You didn't collapse. You evolved. Let's call it what it is. They were never afraid to lose you. They were afraid you'd realize you never needed them. And now that you have, their control evaporates. They can't guilt you. They can't lure you back with crumbs, because the version of you that accepted crumbs is dead. You buried that version in silence, and what rose in its place was a person who knows their worth. So next time that fear creeps in, next time you wonder if your absence matters, remember this. Being forgotten is not your enemy. Being used is, and the less available you are, the more valuable you become. To them, but more importantly, to yourself. Write it in the comments right now. Unavailable is unforgettable. Say it. Show it. Prove it to yourself. Let that be your armor when the fear knocks. Because you're not meant to be everyone's option. You're meant to be rare. You're meant to be sacred. And sacred things aren't everywhere. Sacred things are missed. Stay with me, because next we'll go even deeper into the power of silence. How every second you say nothing is a sentence they have to live with. The guilt, the weight, the shift. It's all coming, and you're going to own it. Number 4, silence is a sentence they deserve. When words fail to deliver truth, silence becomes the loudest justice. Let that one sink deep into your soul, because some people don't deserve a reaction. Some situations don't deserve closure. Some betrayals don't deserve explanation. They deserve silence, not out of pettiness, not out of spite, but out of power, because silence isn't weakness. It's a verdict. It's the sentence they never saw coming. You see, most people are addicted to reactions. They poke, prod, guilt, manipulate, not because they care, but because they want to feel in control. And as long as you respond, even in anger, they still feel powerful. They still feel like they own space in your head, your emotions, your identity. But when you go quiet, when your phone doesn't buzz, your lips don't move, your soul doesn't tremble, that's when they start losing their grip. Imagine this, standing in a courtroom. You've been falsely accused, blamed, misunderstood. Everyone's waiting for you to explain yourself, but you don't. You rise, look them in the eyes, and walk out. No defense, no argument, just presence. That's what your silence becomes. Every second you don't speak is a reminder that you no longer owe them anything, not even your voice. And that silence, it lingers, louder than any apology they could have faked, more haunting than any "I miss you" they could have sent too late. Because now they're sitting alone with the echo of everything they refused to listen to when you were still talking. And that silence, your silence, becomes the lesson. A lesson they never wanted, but one they'll never forget. Here's the uncomfortable truth, folks. They counted on your need to be heard. They counted on your weakness for closure. They built their confidence on the idea that you'd always come back one more time, just to talk it through. But you didn't. You got quiet. And that quiet? It's not empty. It's loaded. Loaded with everything you never said, everything you don't need to say, and everything they now have to live with. You're not cold, you're not cruel, you're done. And that distinction is everything. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." They wanted a reaction. You gave them nothing. They wanted to play emotional chess. You flipped the board and walked away. That's real power. That's Stoic energy. You didn't fight to be right. You chose to be free. And that kind of freedom, that disturbs people in ways anger never could. Now let's address the doubt creeping in. But what if they think I don't care? My friend, if they truly knew your heart, they'd know your silence is the proof that you once did. You just stopped proving it to someone who was never listening. And if they never see that truth, let them stay blind, because your silence isn't about them, it's about you finally choosing peace over performance. Think of your silence like thunder in a clear sky. No warning, no build-up, just impact. They'll replay every moment, every word they said, every time they ignored your effort. They'll try to decode your silence like it's a puzzle. They'll wonder if you're over it, if you're healing, if you're stronger. And the truth is, you are. You're healing in the quiet. You're rebuilding in the background. And by the time they realize what your silence meant, it'll be too late. That's the hidden beauty of choosing not to respond. You force them to sit with themselves. And most people aren't ready for that. They'd rather argue with you than confront their own reflection. They'd rather hear your pain than face their guilt. But now they don't get either, because you've gone silent, And that silence, it demands accountability. Seneca once said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." And in today's world, where everyone is screaming for attention, choosing to live quietly, powerfully, without needing to announce your growth, that's not just courageous, that's revolutionary. So let them wonder, let them guess, let them feel the weight of your absence, because the truth is, you're not being silent to be forgotten, you're being silent to be respected. And if they never get it, that's their loss, not yours. Now do this. Drop it in the comments right now. My silence is my power. Write it. Own it. Let the world feel the shift in your energy. You don't chase anymore. You don't explain. You don't beg. You stay still. You stay solid. You stay sacred. And stay with me, because next, we're going to break down one of the most misunderstood truths of this entire journey, how walking away doesn't mean punishment. It means protection. And once you understand that, you'll never feel guilty for choosing your peace again. Number 5, the Stoic walks away, not to punish, but to protect. Sometimes walking away isn't about teaching them a lesson, it's about teaching yourself never to stay where you are shrinking. That's the truth no one wants to say out loud. You didn't walk away to hurt them. You didn't go silent to be cold. You didn't disappear to get revenge. You left because staying was starting to poison your peace. You left because every time you tried to fix it, you broke a little more of yourself. You left because deep down you knew your soul was bleeding in a place they called love. Most people confuse distance with punishment. They think silence is a weapon. They assume your boundaries are games. But the Stoic doesn't move from ego. The Stoic moves from wisdom. When a fire threatens your house, you don't argue with the flames, you evacuate. And that's what you did, not to make them feel bad, but because you finally realized you deserve peace, you deserve protection, you deserve to breathe without asking for permission. Think about it. How many times did you stay just a little longer, hoping they'd understand? How many chances did you give, hoping they'd finally respect your worth? How many parts of yourself did you silence to keep the peace, not realizing the peace you were protecting was theirs, not yours? That's not loyalty. That's self-abandonment. And my friend, you don't owe your destruction to anyone's comfort. Imagine a bird trapped in a glass cage, fed daily, spoken to kindly, given just enough attention to keep it alive, but its wings ache, its spirit dims, it sings less and less each day, and one day the cage door is left open. Not by accident, but because the bird finally sees it, and without a word, it flies out. That's what walking away is, not a threat, not a punishment, but a return to air. They'll say you changed. Let them. They'll say you're heartless. Let them. They'll twist your silence into guilt, your distance into betrayal. Let them. Because you know the truth. You didn't leave them. You chose you. And choosing yourself in a world that profits off your self-doubt. That's the most dangerous move you'll ever make. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." You stopped trying to convince people of your worth. You stopped forcing broken conversations. You stopped begging people to care, not because you gave up, but because you grew up. And growth requires space, space they could never give you. Here's the lie you have to break right now, that walking away makes you selfish. No, staying in places where you're disrespected, depleted, dismissed, that's the real betrayal. Betrayal of your own soul. And Stoicism teaches us one thing above all else. Your peace is your responsibility. No one else will guard it for you. No one else will protect it unless you do. Let's be real for a second. You could have stayed. You could have clapped back. You could have played their games. You could have matched their disrespect, their silence, their inconsistency, but you didn't. Because you're not them. You don't need to stoop low to prove a point. You don't need chaos to feel seen. You don't need to win the breakup, the argument, the final word. You already won when you walked out with your self-respect intact. They expected a war. You gave them a whisper. They expected a breakdown. You gave them distance. They expected a fight. You gave them peace. And that peace, it speaks louder than anything you could have said. It says, I am no longer available for emotional starvation. I am no longer accessible to people who confuse love with control. I am no longer shrinking to make others comfortable. You walked away, not to close a chapter, but to begin a new one. And maybe it's quiet at first. Maybe it's lonely. Maybe there are days where you question everything. That's okay. Growth is uncomfortable. But the silence you're walking in now, that's healing, that's clarity, that's rebirth. Write this in the comments right now. I walked away to protect my peace. Say it. Show it. Stand on it. Not for them. For you. For the version of you that stayed too long, gave too much, and forgot how much you mattered. This is your return. This is your boundary. This is your freedom. And stay with me, because next, we're entering the part they never prepared for, when your absence doesn't just disturb them, it makes them confront themselves. What happens when you're no longer there to carry their emotional weight? What happens when they have to face their own emptiness without your light to cover it? It's coming, and you'll be ready. Number 6, when they can't reach you, they start reaching for themselves. Sometimes your absence becomes the mirror they spent years avoiding. That's what happens when you finally pull away, not in anger, not in drama, but in silence. When you stop responding, when your name no longer lights up their phone, when your energy, your support, your softness, your presence is just gone. Not explained, not announced, just gone. That's when it hits, because now they're left with something they never had to face before, themselves. You see, as long as you were there, they never had to. As long as you were the one checking in, fixing things, offering understanding, they could stay distracted from their own emptiness. You were their emotional bandage, their comfort zone, their mirror cleaner. You made it easy for them to avoid the mess inside, but now that you've stopped making them the center of your orbit, they're spinning out, because there's no one left to hold the mirror for them. Imagine a house built on cracked foundations. The walls look fine, the windows sparkle, but beneath it all, it's hollow. That's what some people's lives are like. And your love, your loyalty, was the thing keeping it all from collapsing. You held it up with kindness. You forgave too quickly. You understood too much. And the second you stepped back, the whole thing started to shake, because you weren't just a presence. You were the glue, and now they can't reach you. And they don't know what to do with that silence. They thought you'd always be there, didn't they? Always one more text away, one more phone call, one more apology to accept. But now you've built a wall they can't climb, and not because you hate them, because you finally love yourself. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And your thoughts, they're no longer wrapped up in wondering how to fix broken people. They're no longer exhausted from rehearsing conversations in your mind. You've made space to breathe, to grow, to think clearly. And when they try to reach you again, when they feel that void where you used to be, they'll be forced to reach inward. And that's the last place they want to go. They'll replay everything. Not just what you said, but what they didn't say. They'll think about how you showed up on their worst days, how you poured love into a cup that never filled, how you kept choosing them when they were barely choosing you. And now that you're not there, it all rushes in: guilt, regret, realization. But here's what matters. You're not waiting around for that realization anymore. That's the difference between healing and hoping. Healing says, "I wish you well, but I wish me better." Hoping says, maybe they'll change and come back. And that version of you, the one who waited, who hoped, who lowered their worth in silence, you've buried them. You didn't walk away for applause, you walked away for survival. They can't reach you now, not because you're hiding, but because you've elevated. You're no longer operating on the frequency of drama, of desperation, of emotional debt, and unless they rise, they'll never access your energy again. That's what they're learning the hard way. Not through your words, but through your absence. Not through your reminders, but through your refusal to be the reminder anymore. Some people only grow when they lose the one who gave them space to stay small. That was you. You were the comfort zone, the safety net, the soft place to land. And now, they're free-falling through a world that doesn't catch them like you did. Maybe they'll blame you, maybe they'll shame you, maybe they'll pretend they're fine. Let them. You're not here to babysit their breakthroughs. You're here to honor your own. And yes, there will be days when the silence feels too loud, when you wonder if you did the right thing, when you question if they even noticed. But trust this, no one forgets the one who made them feel seen when they were invisible. No one forgets the one who chose peace and left a storm behind. Write this in the comments right now. I gave space. Now they face themselves. Say it. Claim it. Let it remind you that pulling away wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. It was the decision that said, I am no longer available for emotional recycling. I am no longer the home for someone who refuses to build their own. Stay with me. Because next, we're stepping into one of the most empowering shifts of this journey. How your detachment wasn't abandonment. It was a return. A return to the parts of you they never appreciated. A return to your power, your center, your truth. They lost you because you finally came back to yourself. Number 7, you didn't abandon them. You returned to yourself. You didn't walk away from them. You walked back to you, and they just happened to be standing in the wrong direction. That's the part they'll never admit. They'll call it abandonment. They'll say you gave up too soon. They'll twist your silence into punishment and paint your peace as betrayal. But here's the truth they don't want to face. You didn't leave them. You finally came home to yourself. And the more you heal, the more you realize you were never supposed to lose yourself just to keep someone else feeling found. People throw the word loyalty around like it's supposed to keep you tethered to pain. They expect you to stay even when it hurts, to keep giving even when you're empty, to remain silent even when your soul is screaming. But that's not love. That's self-sacrifice disguised as commitment. And my friend, you were not born to bleed for people who only ever brought knives. Imagine a traveler who's been walking in circles in a dense forest, chasing voices, following footprints, looking for signs of approval, tired, lost, desperate for direction. But one day, they stop chasing shadows and start listening. Deep breath, heart steady, and they hear it. Not someone else calling, but their own voice. The one that had been buried under noise. That moment when they turn around and walk the other way, that's not quitting. That's awakening. That's what you did. You returned to the version of you that existed before you were told you had to earn love, before you believed peace was selfish, before you were conditioned to accept chaos as passion. You came back to your inner sanctuary, the one that was always there, waiting for you to remember it. That's not abandonment. That's alignment. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And for too long your thoughts were painted with their drama, their rejection, their absence. You were thinking with their voice in your head, so of course it felt like leaving. But once you began to think with your voice again, the colors changed. Clarity returned, self-worth came back online, and what felt like loss started to feel like freedom. They'll say, "You changed." Yes, you did. You stopped being available for emotional tug-of-war. You stopped explaining yourself to people who never listened. You stopped auditioning for love in rooms where you were always underestimated. You changed because the cost of staying the same was your sanity, and nothing is worth that. Let's call this what it is, a reunion, not with them, but with yourself. The you who loves quietly but deeply, the you who gives but not to be used, the you who doesn't need attention to feel alive. The you who knows that walking away doesn't mean hate, it means healing. You came back to your values, your vision, your voice, and for the first time in a long time, you're listening. And let's be honest, it wasn't easy. There were nights when you doubted everything, when you replayed old conversations, when you stared at your phone, battling the urge to reach out just one more time. But you didn't. Because the pain of missing them became less than the pain of missing yourself. And that's the shift. That's when the storm inside quiets. You never needed to scream your worth. You never needed to prove that you cared. You never needed to explain why you left, because truth doesn't beg to be heard. It stands, it breathes, it becomes undeniable over time. And now they feel it, not through your presence, but through your absence, not through your replies, but through your restraint, not through your words, but through your decision to choose peace over performance. Seneca said, "No man was ever wise by chance." And you didn't get here accidentally. You made the hard choices. You sat through the silence. You resisted the pull to go back to something that looked like love, but felt like war. You chose yourself. And in doing so, you've become the kind of person who no longer chases, but attracts. The kind of soul who doesn't need loud entrances, because their exit was enough. Write this in the comments right now. I didn't abandon, I returned to me. Let it echo. Let it be your reminder when the guilt creeps in, because you don't owe anyone your suffering. You owe yourself your soul. And if they wanted to be part of your peace, they shouldn't have thrived in your chaos. Stay with me, because next we're going to unlock what really happens when your detachment becomes permanent, when your silence isn't temporary, and they realize, too late, that you've stopped circling back. They don't know it yet, but your peace is the closure. Number 8, they lost access, but you gained yourself. You didn't just walk away from them. You unlocked the door they kept you locked behind and stepped into the life they hoped you'd never discover without them. That's the shift they never saw coming, because for the longest time they thought they had you, not because they deserved you, but because they were used to the version of you that was available, predictable, forgiving, always picking up the phone, always coming back, always explaining. They didn't value your presence, they counted on it. And then, one day, without warning, you stopped showing up. Not with rage, not with vengeance, just silence, space, distance. And they didn't just lose your attention, they lost access to your energy. That's when the panic set in, because they realized the key they used to have no longer worked. They knocked, and you didn't answer. They sent signals, and you didn't flinch. They baited, and you didn't bite. They wanted to restart the cycle, but you had evolved beyond the loop. They thought they'd hear from you again, that one day you'd fold, that one moment of weakness would bring you back. But weakness never came. Not this time, because you finally understood. Giving them access was costing you everything, your peace, your confidence, your clarity, your soul. And while they were busy calculating what they lost, you were out there gaining everything they never gave you. You gained your voice back, your standards, your ability to say no without guilt, your freedom to choose peace, even when it meant walking alone. You gained self-respect. And once you taste that kind of power, you never go back to begging again. Imagine a vault that's been wide open for years, people coming and going as they please, taking what they want, leaving behind confusion and chaos. And then, one day, the vault locks. Not because it's broken, but because it's finally secure. You didn't become cold, you became protected. You didn't shut down, you leveled up your boundaries. Marcus Aurelius said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." That's the truth you've discovered. Your peace was never going to come from their apology. Your healing was never going to come from their change. It was always going to start the moment you said, "No more." They don't know the battles you fought just to get here, the nights you wanted to reach out, the days you wanted to fix what broke, the ache of detaching from someone you once believed in. But you did it. You did the hard thing. And now they can't reach you, not because you've disappeared, but because you've risen. You don't move the same anymore. You don't give the same. You don't open doors just because someone knocks. Now they have to earn entrance. They have to rise to your level or stay outside. That's the cost of losing access to someone who has done the inner work. You don't lower the bar anymore. You are the bar. And let's be clear, they'll miss you. Not just the warmth, not just the loyalty, not just the way you made them feel seen, but the version of themselves that existed when you were still within reach. But that version of you is gone. Not bitter, not broken, just better. So let them remember you, in their quiet moments, in their guilty scrolls, in the spaces where they used to hear from you. Let them wonder if you still think about them, if you still care. Let them feel the silence that now replaces what used to be your love. Because that silence, that's your healing. And while they lost access to you, you finally gained access to you, the real you, the one who doesn't settle for almosts, the one who doesn't explain peace, the one who chooses solitude over emotional survival, the one who now attracts, not chases, the one who is no longer waiting, but living. Write this in the comments right now. They lost access. I found me. Say it, seal it. Let it be the final affirmation in this chapter. And if this message spoke to your soul, if it reminded you of your strength, your worth, your journey, leave a like and subscribe, not just for more content, but because you're choosing to stay connected to the version of you that's rising. Stay stoic, stay sacred, and never forget, your peace is the proof that you've already won.